Welcome to America Uncanceled. I'm Mercedes Schlapp. Social media and the nonstop pressure to post updates has made everyone's food and weight obsession even worse. Meredith Shaler, I know her as Meredith Terpelick, wants to help you let go of this obsession. She's out with a new book called How to Let Go of Your Food and Weight Obsession. It's a must buy and offers great advice on how to overcome addiction through faith and spirituality. Meredith is also the host of the podcast Guiding God's Daughters. Get real and go deep. Meredith joins me now. Meredith, thanks for being on America Uncanceled.
Of course. Thanks for having me, Mercy.
Well, let's get started here because obviously here at CPAC, our big focus is always political analysis, what's going on in current events, whether it be in the U.S. or across the globe. But I was so intrigued by and really wanted to talk about this issue of what happens with this food and weight obsession. And you wrote, this is now your second book. Yep. Why did you decide to write the book?
Actually, I wrote this at the beginning of COVID. I didn't really have a desire to write it. It was, I really felt led by the Lord that there were going to be a lot of people that were struggling coming out of COVID, overeating, dealing with all these weight issues. And he wanted to have me help point them to addressing it with him. So
what are your main points when you dig deep into the book, when people, as we know during these past 2 years of dealing with COVID, people have lost loved ones, people have lived in constant fear, people have lived in isolation. I mean, you still see people, at least here in Alexandria, Virginia, they're wearing their mask, they're very scared, they want to get triple boosted at this point. What do you think is causing all this stress, and why are people turning to food and binging as their answer?
I think it's anxiety and fear, and a lot of people don't have faith. So they don't realize there's something greater and there's a greater plan and it's going to be okay. And they all turn to food to cope.
So when you were deciding to write this book, I mean, one of the things I was looking at is some of these facts that are out there. More than 1/3 of adults in the United States have obesity. Obesity is affecting about 1 in 6 children in the United States. I mean, it almost sounds like this is a crisis here in the U.S. and it's also, I think, a part of something that, I don't think there's enough attention being placed on this obsession with what people are eating, dealing with their weight. Do you think social media plays a big part of this as well? Do they try to push on this, like, you better be skinny or else?
Yeah, I think social media plays a huge role. It's all about kind of surface. It's all about the outside, fixing your body to make it okay, getting the right diet plan. And honestly, I think that stuff has become like a religion for some people. And behavior modification becomes everything, and they forget that God's in it to help them.
So you say God's in it to help them. We know that, the diet industry is more focused on what, points you should write down with every food you eat, or it's the latest fad on what shake you should buy, or whether you should do the intermediate fasting. It goes on, which I think creates a lot of confusion in people's minds. What's your advice to these individuals who are really trying to find a way to eat right, and live a healthy lifestyle?
I would say, really, honestly, what you need. You probably were on a diet 20 years ago that showed you what are the foods that fuel you. And I bet if you sat down with the journal and you looked at the foods that you can't stop eating, you would recognize the ones that don't. So it's really getting honest with yourself and getting a hold of what are these things and how can I seek God to help me with my weakness? Because in our nation, it's all about fix my weakness. Don't show my weakness. And with him, I can give him my weakness and he'll be my strength.
So is it in essence, it's interesting because you always think, well, you kind of separate the faith, do your prayer life for, these other issues that you're dealing with, but you're actually saying, okay, when dealing with this kind of food obsession, weight obsession, just not overeating, undereating, you're saying bring God in to help you in this process.
Yep. And And actually, I'm also saying it is not a surface issue, it is a heart issue. So it's the reasons why we're eating, like the COVID stuff, the isolation. It's everybody thinks it's just a physical issue, and it goes so much deeper. And that's what I want to help people see, to finally heal. Because they think if I lose the 60 pounds, then I can finally live. And it's like, oh no, you never dealt with the inside. So that's what I want to help people do.
Right. That's such an interesting factor. People thinking, well, exercise is going to make me feel better. Eating right is going to make me feel better. But if there is deeper hurt inside, things you haven't dealt with from the past, then that necessarily doesn't resolve the issue. Is that right?
Right. Exactly. And you'll keep doing the same thing. What's the definition of insanity? It's doing the same thing again and again, expecting a different result. So it's like, hey, quit the diets, do what's right, give that food to God, and then let Him help you through all the hard stuff.
So you dealt with your own issues when it came to eating issues, eating disorders, etc. Walk us through, going through that painful process in your life and then coming out of it on the other side.
Actually, yeah, I was actually in grad school at Notre Dame, of all places, and decided to do this study with an author that wrote the book Intuitive Eating, and thought, I was diagnosed with binge eating, and I thought, this is going to be the fix. I can eat whatever I want and I'll be fine. And then I saw this picture of myself running around the lakes at Notre Dame, and I just had this loud voice, "You're still fat." And I was like, wow, it was so powerful. And the cravings I wanted for food was so powerful. It was like, I was done. I was like, I can't do this anymore. I need help. And that's when I called a treatment center and said, I need to check myself in. And I called my dad, and he's like, oh, honey, go to a spa for a weekend. And I'm like, no, Dad, that's sweet, but no. So but when I got there, they said, okay, guess what? You're going to address your parents' divorce.
I'm not sure if they do that at Weight Watchers or not. That's what I'm starting to wonder. Jenny Craig, I mean, seriously, no one ever brings that up. People are like, no, you're just eating like this because this is how what you've done for decades.
That is what I've talked about in all my interviews and my studies that I've done. I'm like, do you go into a Weight Watchers meeting and talk about, your spirituality and what's going on in your heart? No, you compare your weight on the scale next to the chick that lost 20 pounds next to you, and then you talk about these are the healthy foods to eat. You don't address this stuff at all.
Interesting. So do you feel that by addressing these deeper issues, obviously at the time it was a divorce of your parents, how then did you get to that other side of saying, okay, now I know this is the reason why I'm falling into this trap?
Well, I had to work through it. I had to get therapy. I had to do different things to really address it. And I really had to go. I mean, I'm in 12-step recovery, but I really also had to keep trusting God. I had to go deeper in my faith. And to me, that's the missing piece. That's the missing piece in obesity. I mean, when I was moved from the White House to Health and Human Services,
right.
I'm going to work on obesity. And I left because all it was a bunch of fighting. And I'm like, wait a minute, this isn't. Everybody wanted to blame.
Yeah.
It's like Washington does not have the answers to obesity. And then I think God led me to grad school, but then to treatment to realize it's an inside job.
So you talk about faith, but here we are in America where you're seeing our country turn away from faith. You're seeing, for example, a recent study come out, or a recent poll come out in California where so many of these children are really facing depression. They're facing serious mental health issues. Part of it was COVID. Part of it, I think, is the social media causing all this confusion about who they are, whether they should mutilate their bodies or not. And then on top of that, there's no God. So it's almost like, can we get rid of TikTok and replace it with God? I mean, how do we address these societal issues that are really impacting our youth right now?
Well, that's funny. That's why my podcast was called Tune In with Meredith, and now it's called Guiding God's Daughters, specifically because I guide people. I kind of say, hey, this is what the world's going to tell you, but it's not the truth. This is what God's going to show you. This is how you can lead life with God. It's not popular, but I find a lot of people feel like they need God, but they don't know how to find Him because they're scared in this world. And the enemy is all over this world, and he is trying so hard, he's not even hiding anymore. And I just want to empower young women and anybody that needs it to realize, hey, keep following God no matter whether it's popular or not.
Yeah. Well, I think, this emptiness that exists with so many of these kids, and there's so much of this depression and anxiety, and they keep asking why, and they keep asking, how do I get out of these problems? And I feel that if it wasn't for my faith in God, I think I would be very lost in life. I think that being able to turn to Scripture every single day and reading through Scripture and figuring out, why God has put us in this world at this particular time, and knowing that He's with us, I think is one of the strongest messages we need to hear right now in what I find is a very chaotic environment, and where you have family structures breaking down, where you have parents who don't feel empowered to basically guide their children, and they themselves have lost faith in God. So what can we do to return families to the faith and to knowing that this is the answer in helping to deal with these societal problems? As you said, the answers are not here in Washington.
I think I actually keep talking about it as identity crisis. We talk about these sexual identities. I think the world is trying to make people attached to these identities, and it's all in an effort to steal their identity in Christ. And I think that is trying to show parents where true identity is going to come from, where that true satisfaction on the inside is going to come from. There's a stat recently that belonging is one of our the things we crave the most. And if you look around, you will see belonging on billboards everywhere. And who do you think uses belonging? Every agenda that's coming at us is, you're going to belong if you make people understand who you are. And it's like, you're not going to.
Well, and you're only able to belong to a certain group, and if you don't agree with that certain group, or they'll shun you.
Exactly.
Which is just an outrage. Yep. Because that's not Jesus's message in any way, right? Nope. So and the great thing about America even is the fact that we're able to have dissenting opinions and ask questions and challenge things. And yet, you see this political dominance, this kind of ideology of intolerance, of saying, well, you don't agree with me. You're questioning me on everything. And so that makes you a fascist, yes, be an extremist. And I think for parents, they've taken such offense to this.
Yes. And I think parents are scared. You even hear teachers are scared. I mean, people are scared to stand up and say, what's really going on. I mean, I talked to my daughter's in preschool, and I talked to the preschool teacher, like, I'm not game with this or this or this. And I think parents have to be honest with people in their community and with their kids. To me, it's having open conversations. Like, Ellie's a little young, but you bet that I am praying about, how am I going to have a real conversation with her, that there are people that are saying they're under other genders and all these things. Parents need to be bold, and they need to be bold in their faith.
And they got to take it back to the Bible. I mean, it's so simple. I mean, it's just so simple.
It's so simple.
And I just saw today, there was on Twitter where it was like a parent who posted taking her daughter to the doctor to get her first set of hormone blocks, and the child was maybe 8 years old, Meredith. So, it really gets to the point that you have to ask yourselves, will this ever stop? The mere fact that hospitals are basically supporting this gender mutilation at the youngest of ages, where a child is so innocent and incapable of making these decisions. I mean, what do you think the consequences will be in our society with the steps that these doctors, and I would say these irresponsible parents, are taking to destroy their children?
Well, I watched some TikTok video of some guy that, reversed back, and it was him crying, going, wait a minute, this happened to me. Now this is going to happen to so many more kids. And look at 5 years down the road. Talk about having empty souls.
Right.
I mean, they are just going to be heartbroken. And the parents are that defiant of knowing God and so hardcore on their agendas that it's like they're kind of forcing it on their kids, which is ironic because I think we're forcing our faith on our kids, But it's like you're hurting your child by trying to fit into culture, because that's not what it's about.
Well, and let's talk about these woke corporations pushing the agenda as well. I mean, you look at Target, where they're selling chest binders and all sorts of strange contraptions. And on top of that, you also have the media that tries to really put like this empathetic lens on this whole argument. And then if you don't agree with them, that you're kind of not in favor of any sort of transgender rights or anything like this. But then you have TikTok, which then these children that watch TikTok, they literally, it's just this incredible propaganda that's being pushed by the left. So knowing that there's so much brokenness in all these components, and you have the media pushing it, you have the corporations pushing it, what can parents do to fight back?
I think parents can really, I think parents have to be educated. I think a lot of parents just kind of are ignorant to it. Like, oh, it's happening. What am I going to do about it? Or they're fearful. I don't know what to do about it. And I'm like, educate yourself. You need to be on. And I think that's the problem is people are on. You're not on conservative. You're not looking at conservative radio stuff. You're not looking at you're not watching the right stuff. So you're just letting the world run your kid's life. So I think it's two-part. I think it's educate yourself on what's going on and don't pretend it's not happening, and get in the Bible. Get your family to church. Find a church that works for you and get your family in there. I mean,
what do you find, Meredith, to be the best resources that you have found so far to really educate yourself in this process that you want to share with other parents?
I love that. Is it Moms for America? Where that's at the organization? Yeah, I love Moms for America. I love Telegram. I love Truth Social. You know, because I get to really see, okay, what's really going on.
Right.
You know, yes, some of it can be a little all over the place, but that's the stuff I watch. You know, and that's a lot of my news, because I need to know. You know, there's one that always shows what's going on in some of these schools, because the schools will be like, that's not happening here.
Oh yeah, but it will. I mean, they'll break through in this sense. I will tell you that. I'm really excited about this podcast, Guiding God's Daughters, Get Real and Go Deep. This is about raising women in faith, not in this worldly culture. And I think for us here at CPAC, I feel so strongly that while we are part of these political fights and these cultural fights, I think the goal, at least that Matt and I have tried to do, is really center ourselves and even this organization in faith, to know that it is God's will to be able to be a voice of reason and be able to be open about what we believe is so critical in helping to save America, and that's to make sure that other Americans out there feel like they're not alone, that other parents out there believe that we can build a strong network out there. So I'll let you have the final thoughts, Meredith.
That's what I was about to say. You know, I do this. I share my story vulnerably because there are people that need to know they're not alone, and they need to access, wait, this might be something I've been struggling with in my whole life, and wow, I can address it. I'm not the only one, and that is why I share it.
Well, remember, y'all, go to Meredith's, go make sure you get Meredith's book, How to Let Go of Your Food and Weight Obsession. Where can people buy your book?
Amazon.
Okay.
Or my website, which is meredithterpeluk.com. TERPELUK is how you spell it.
We will make sure we put up the website on the screen for you all. Order the book. It's a great gift for your family as well. As you know, I think as we're all trying to get through and really recover, I would say, from what we believe was, a really hard 2 years, but knowing that, I always say this all the time, I'm not giving hope in America. I know God's still with us, and we have great people like you, Meredith, in this fight, really not only, to save this country, but to save the soul of every American that's struggling out there. So God bless you, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Mercy.
And thank you all for tuning in to America Uncanceled. Remember, we have expanded to the podcast world, and you can listen to America Uncanceled with Matt and Mercedes Schlapp wherever you get your podcast. We will see you next.